Anyway, just keep that in mind when you're using text and when you're choosing a format, because when you're choosing a resolution and a pixel size and a different format, like how the text is going to show up if you decide to do text in Photoshop, all that is going to matter depending on where it's going to go. So generally my go-to is just web large, 1920 by 1080. It's the size of my screen. And I can do always resolution 300. 300 is typically just the best kind of resolution you're going to get out of most displays and print. Orientation, and if you have artboards checked, what that basically means is that instead of having one Photoshop canvas, you can have many Photoshop canvases. So you can duplicate it over and work on 2 iterations of the same thing separately. So I'll leave artboards on, background white.
I have a question. Why come I only have, like, your center of your screen, you have many options? I just have something that says default Photoshop size.
At the top, at the tabs here, do you have different tabs for different, because if you only have go to recent or you go to saved, if you go to web, you don't have all this.
Oh yeah, okay, I see it. Okay, I got it.
There's also templates. So I'm not sure if these are templates that are being offered to me. I don't recognize them. But in the Creative Cloud, if you save templates from their, I forget what it's called, but their cloud, whatever, where all the templates live, and the plugins too. The ones that you add to your account will start showing up here for whatever software that those templates apply to. Okay, so we have a whole bunch of artboards in this project, right? So I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna leave this open, right? And I'm gonna start a new file right next to it where I'm gonna take these assets and I'm gonna kind of compose them in Photoshop and edit them and add a background. Well, there's backgrounds here actually. So I'm basically just gonna use these assets to, how about host a rendering? Like, yeah. Let's do that. Like something I expect you to do for class. So you start a new one, 300, create, you go here. So I'm gonna pick the rendering first, right? So that I can change the color palette, my defaults. You don't see this, but I'm going through files to pick a rendering. Any questions while I do this?
You created a new file, right?
Yeah, so I have 2 files. I have the template file downloaded with all those assets, and I also have a new blank one that's web large, like I was originally creating. 300 resolution, very important to remember that. Projects, I forget where my more. I'm gonna pick something from school. Okay, I'm gonna take the base model that you have. Yeah, this is just what I ran into. So this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to show you how you can go from a completely plain thing. Ooh, I thought I dragged and dropped it. There we go. All right. Okay. So we want to make this first, like this is like what you call a clay rendering. This is actually how I learned Photoshop, actually. Like this kind of stuff is something I've been doing for a long time. So this is what we would call a clay rendering, where you have no textures. It's just like the lighting, and then you get some shadows, and this is what you call like soft shadows. So you separate the ambient occlusion, right? Like shadows that you get from 2 surfaces coming into contact with each other. You separate that from the shadows that you're getting from your sun, right? So that you're able to manipulate them separately in Photoshop. I'm not too familiar with working with smart objects, and I do find them a little bit complicated, and I think most beginners do. So if it's something you want to look into, it's a better way of working than just duplicating layers on your artboards. But just for speed and because I feel like this is just easier for learning, I'm gonna do it that way. So I duplicate the layer always, so I keep the original. You can also right click here and you have all your options for your layers. I thought there was a way to, yeah, so, but over here you have to lock a layer. So I can lock that layer and I can't edit my base. I'm trying to move the window you guys are in so I can see things better. Okay.
You click the option to work in 3D. What does that 3D workspace mean?
Where do you see 3D workspace?
Like I just inserted a picture. I was trying to create a new layer. And it told me, you're about to create a 3D layer. Would you like to switch to 3D workspace?
That's not a picture, then it's a 3D file. Which you can mess with 3D objects in Photoshop too. I mean, I'll just drop one in, but I don't Not too familiar with that. I've used it a little bit, but I searched for an STL. Is that right? Did you drop a 3D file?
It's a JPEG, I'm pretty sure. Let me see. Yeah, it's a JPEG. I just put no, whatever.
Yeah, I guess no. All right, we'll leave that then. Okay. So another thing to note is that the layer has this little symbol next to it, right? So that's going to limit some of the functionality, some of the things you're going to be able to do in Photoshop. So just for efficiency, I was going to rasterize layer, and now there are a lot of functions in Photoshop that are more available to me for that. So all these bars are in my way. My screen here is not nearly as big as at home. But over here we have the properties panel above the layers. And this is the properties that usually you're going to see for whatever element or layer that you're working with. So size, alignment, and things like that. But what I like to have open up there actually is if you go to Window, you go to Gradients, right? So Gradients, you can just add these tabs anywhere. So having gradients here to like plop in besides your color palettes is pretty great. You see here a color palette that matches our template file. I can switch over to the template file and check over here that they match. So yeah, I could just go yeah, I'm just gonna let this template decide the color palette I'm gonna use, and I'm gonna plop that onto this render that we have here. So you can have it so that I want to be efficient. So I mean, I have it default that wherever I click, I select that layer that I'm trying to drag. But there's a way to change that. But if you right click over layers that are overlapping, you can always like right click and it'll show you all the layers that are under where you just clicked, so you can select the right one. So with this one, I can just drag it over to the other file up here. And I can just drop it right here into Photoshop. Now I'm gonna zoom out, so I'm gonna hold the Alt key and I'm gonna use the mouse wheel to zoom out. I can see how the background falls in there. And of course on the right, I'm gonna make sure that my layers are ordered correctly. Now obviously I wanna get rid of the white space. Whoops. Let me close, apparently I have Rhino open. Let me close this. I was fixing the files I was gonna give you so you have them fresh tomorrow. Okay. So I gotta get rid of the white space. Now the best way to get rid of a whole region of color, I feel, is at the top, the menu bar, you go to select, color range, and then you just click on what color you wanna get rid of. So you can turn up the fuzziness, right, to see how much white, like where your white threshold is gonna be for getting rid of white. So I'm gonna kinda keep it there, okay. Now it's pretty well clipped, just gonna go with it, hit delete. Right, and now it's looking pretty great. I don't like that this is a 2D surface, right? It just kind of looks like it's floating like nowhere. So I want to kind of get it a platform. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to center, let me give myself some margins. So I do Control T to resize the layer. It's transforming, right? I hold Control T and then I start moving it. Depending on how you have Photoshop set up, it might be scaling proportionally. If it's not scaling proportionally, you hold Shift to get rid of the proportional, scaling. But if from the get-go it's free, right? It's not proportional, you can hold Shift to enable that. So it's just reversed. All right, so that's kind of centered, a little smaller, too small. That's fine. Kind of center. Oh, guides. So if you wanted to really center it, you go to Window, or sorry, View, and turn rulers on. So as you see, I had it on. So View Rulers, and then you get the size right here in pixels. If you want to change the size of it, you can right click and switch to inches. So this is, for whatever reason, 6 and however much that is. I just tend to work in pixels. And you can kind of, I'm pretty sure you could snap to the middle. I know there's a way to snap to the middle, but holding Alt changes the orientation in which you're setting up the guide. So I'm gonna just kind of find the middle. If it's 1920, the middle would be, you can help me out here if you want, 960. 960, pretty sure. It's kind of snapping there too, so I think I'm right. It's just really accurate. And then 1080, so 540. So that's about the middle. So actually, I want to move this a little more to the right. Perfect. Okay, if I want to resize, if I want to make the artboard fit the entire window, I do Control-0, and it makes the image as big as it can be so that I can see it. Making great time. Any questions? How are you guys doing? Good? I see you taking notes. Cool.
Yeah, I'm just trying to like follow along.
Gotcha, gotcha. I mean, this is more like functionality and interface stuff. We haven't really done much yet. But yeah.
How'd you get the gradients option on the window? I don't see it.
So any tab over here that you want in your Windows panels, you're going to go at the top menu to Window, and then whatever's checkmarked you're actually looking at or you have available right now. So you can turn on Learn. Oh, libraries. Definitely have libraries on if you're if you have Creative Cloud. So you could have different groups, like different layers, or whether they be in After Effects and Illustrator and Photoshop, any Adobe software. If you have your libraries open in any one of those softwares, you have access to the same assets. So if I can create a new folder for different assets, like for example, this background, if I wanted to save it, view by group. So I can view by group, create a new group, call it backgrounds. And then I can just drag this layer there. And close drawing over the help. And close Chrome too. Spotify, jeez. There we go. So now that background is available in Illustrator, for example. If I wanted to create stuff here and then take it into Illustrator and they can live there forever, or I can delete them. I can create folders for like temporary, like just for projects, or I can archive them, etc. So it's really neat to organize there if there's elements that you're going to use that are repeated. So for example, instead of dragging these things over, if I wanted to continually use them, like let's say these shapes, right? These would be dope to continuously use for like maybe collage renderings or like early on diagrams and things like that. So I can just here just drop them into not grouped for now. Okay, so I have them over here and I can just drop them in anywhere. So for example, let's say I want to use the cylinder to signify trees and like a very, almost like making this look like an architectural model, right? Bring that in, resize it. So even though I'm resizing it from the side, I have it so that it resizes evenly. Move it over, get the right layers, layer order. There we go. It's pretty neat. And now I'm going to do something. So I'm going to zoom in by doing Control plus. Sometimes I like to do Control plus. Sometimes I like to hold Alt and zoom in with the mouse wheel, but either one. And I'm going to do Control T again to transform. But if I right click, I get more options on how to transform. So I could distort. And now if I stretch from the edge, I can make it skinnier. And if I hold, not shift, what do I hold to make it even? Whoa, that's pretty cool and trippy, but not what I meant to do. Actually, I don't have to do distort. I could just scale it normally without, by holding shift. Yeah, there we go. But then it's kind of like cylindrical, so I could also do, I guess it would be distort. Actually, you know what I would do to make this taller but retain the same proportion? I'd duplicate the layer, right? So right click to get those layer options, duplicate it, and then I drag it up. And I can drag it up freely, but if I hold shift, I drag it up evenly, right? I grab the eraser tool over here on the left, and apparently I can't erase on it. So I'm gonna right click on it, and again, I'm gonna rasterize. So there it's telling me it's a little cloud symbol, it's telling me it's an asset from the library. So I right click to rasterize, just like I did the photo I brought in, and now I can make the brush smaller by holding left or tapping left bracket. Left and right bracket changes the shape of the brush. It's a really quick way to do it instead of going over here and changing the size. Or yeah, here you could change the hardness, which means like whether the edge is soft or not, like you're seeing here, right? This is a soft edge, this is a hard edge. So I want a soft edge. Oops. All right, hardness 0, size. Oh, I'm using the clone stamp. Oops. and then I just tap away. And the reason why I have to tap away is because my opacity up here, these are my brush properties at the top. My opacity sets to 10, so I'm gonna set it to like 50 and just kind of paint away. I don't wanna do 100 because then you can always like kind of get a seam. It's good to like paint it, you know? I'm gonna duplicate that layer again because it's like a little see-through. So just duplicating it. So if there's a little transparency, like let's say a layer has, I'll show you. Let's say this layer, it has over on the right side where layers are at, you can see the opacity of layers. So let's say this layer had an opacity of 50%, right? So it's see-through, right? Obviously, it has 50% opacity. If I duplicate it, right, that effect is now staggered. So that's 100% opacity, right? Maybe not 100%. Doesn't look quite like it. But if I need to solve this, is kind of how I'd go about it. I just keep duplicating. And then if I click on this bottommost one, I hold shift and then I click another one. It's going to select all the other ones just like your files. And you right click and you merge those layers, and now it retains that opacity. All right. So now I'm just going to rasterize this layer too, merge the entire thing. Right now that's a new asset I've created from a different asset. Before I merge the whole thing, I'm going to fix that seam a little bit too. Maybe I'm being nitpicky, but there we go. Boom. I don't even know if you could see that, but I could. It's gonna bother me.
The eraser that you were using to take away to make it blend in together. What command was it?
Right, so they would blend in together. So basically what the eraser did was this, right? And by having an object under it that has the bottom part, you know?
Okay.
Do you get what I did or no?
You use the eraser to erase the bottom part
of the top ones. Yeah, like these are separate layers.
Yeah.
Right. So I just copied this one. Right. This one I just copied. By the way, to copy like that, instead of duplicating the layer, like you right click over here to duplicate it so you can stack them. Right. And then I just deleted out this part.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just painted it out with the eraser.
And then what command was it you used to blend it in?
No, I didn't blend it in. I just took it away.
Okay.
It just looked like that. Oh, I'll do it again.
Okay.
Yeah, right there. I go to the eraser tool and make sure that I'm like at 50% opacity and that I have a soft brush, meaning like the hardness over here is turned to 0. And then I just paint away right here and it's gone. I'll select all the layers. Oops, they're not in the right place. So if I wanted to, I'll show you that in a sec. Let me put this right there. There's the layers. Cool. All right, now if I wanted to copy this thing as many places, I mean, first of all, what I'm gonna do, well, yeah, I'm gonna just go for this. I'm gonna hold Alt, and instead of duplicating the layer, I'm gonna hold Alt. If I click and drag, right, it just creates a copy instead of moving the object. So I can do that a whole bunch of times. But actually what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna first use a selection tool. So you have different selection tools. You should just look these up. We don't have much more time. We're approaching 7:30 and I wanna show you something real quick after this. I mean, we're pretty much there. Like with what I'm giving you right now, there's so much that you do, and you just have to start like bringing in assets and different layers out of your 3D model. So remember that in Rhino, you could export line, like remember how to change display modes in Rhino? Right? So you export a layer with a bunch of lines, you export a layer with colors, you export a layer with, I'm gonna get into that a little bit more. Okay, there is something I have to show you for you to understand that. So let me just wrap up with this part. Selection tools, I'm just gonna use the box selection. I'm gonna draw a box around this one. I'm gonna go back to the move tool. And if I hold Alt and click and drag now, I didn't create a new layer, right? They're still on the same layer. So I can make sure that they're on the same layer this way. I don't know why I put trees there, it's bad. Just put trees here. All right, put one there. And now they kind of look out of place. Mainly they need a shadow. So at the bottom right, you have effects. So I'm just gonna do, oops. I'm gonna do effects here, and I'm gonna do a drop shadow for that layer. It's gonna bring up a window. And so in this window, just look up effects too. Like all of these effects work the same way. But actually, the way I'm gonna do this is I'm gonna duplicate the layer, and I'm gonna hide it so you see what I do. I'm gonna transform it. I should have kept them all in different layers. No. You know what? I'll just paint it in. It's gonna be faster that way. So knowing all the tools that you have at your disposal is good if you have to pivot, like how you do something. So in this case, painting in, I think is gonna be the quickest way because I could just select the brush tool. Probably should have done this before I copied them. Double click on the color swatch here to switch to black. Hold the bracket, right? Or tap away to make it the same size as that cone. I'm gonna create a new layer, right, at the bottom right here. So with a new layer, right, that's under the cones, and a brush that's black, right, so I can paint in shadows, and lower the opacity on it to like 40. There's like, I have to kind of get it right the first time, if possible, so 15, yeah, 15. So I click on it, right, and then I go to where I think the shadow should go. I hold shift and I click, and it draws a straight line, right? So I'll do that again over here, or I'll just do it in the same place. I click where I want the line to start, I hold shift, and then in the direction I want the shadow to go, I click again, and by holding shift, it draws a straight line, right? And if I continue to hold shift and click, it does like a polyline with the brush. You could also, I'll just let you know that if I'm drawing and I start holding shift, it switches to ortho in whatever direction I was, drawing. Whoops, so I'll do that again, have that there. And then what I should have done was this earlier, but I'll just kind of do the same thing. Now, this is the part that you're gonna have to know for your like different layers. So let's say besides these shadows, I wanna now accentuate like the light play here. So I'm gonna zoom out a little bit, and I see that the background has the sky have like a bluish color, and then some sunsets are kind of violet and pinkish, but what I am trying to get across is that I'm going to do a color overlay to show you how you overlay layers. So whether this were, if it, oh look, I'll do a silhouette. I'll show you with two things. So I'll do a silhouette line around the whole thing by doing the same brush trick I just showed you. So I'll go, actually, real quick, because I wanted to do this too. I'm just going to duplicate the base layer, drag it down, put it under. And if you use the Polyline Selection tool, I'm just going to like draw out the box. Oh, whoops, too far. This isn't right, but it's going to look messy, but it's fine. And you could use the brush tool then to maybe pick the same gray tone. If you have the brush tool selected and you hold Alt, I can actually select the tone of gray. So I'm actually going to pick a tone of gray. Well, if the sun is in that direction, it has to be pretty light. So I'm actually going to maybe take it off of the cone. I can paint it in on that layer. I'm actually going to paint it into both layers. There we go. Cool, so now I have a side. Oh, that other side. If you deselect, Control D is to deselect, but if you deselect, you can undo to get your selection back. Just can't move. I mean, you go to Window, History also, and you can go back to that selection, or just before you deselected that too, if you lose your selection. So to take away from the selection, I'm gonna hold Alt on the Polyline Selection tool so that I can get rid of this lighter part that I wanted. And now swatch a darker shade and paint it on this side. Now, go back to the top layer, go back to the black brush. I draw my, so it's a soft brush. I want to take it, make it a hard brush to make it look like a line. So click there, hold shift, click here, click here, click here, click here. I could take my time, or I could do this. Honestly, I mean, this is nice to do, that you're able to do this on the computer on Photoshop. But if you have a stylus or a tablet at your disposal, this sort of stuff is way better. I mean, if you can get this, if you can make 2D, right? Make 2D gives you the line work of whatever view you have in Rhino. So if you use your views right, you can get the line work and import it into CAD or Illustrator, and then export it as a JPEG or PDF out of either, and have your line work on the model. I'm actually gonna make the brush smaller, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick white, and I'm just gonna see how this looks, and I'm gonna outline a lot smaller the plot project. I don't love it, but I started it. Any questions? No? Okay. Last leg. So.
Wait, I have
Yeah.
a question.
Go for it, go for it. Yeah.
I always have a problem with doing exactly what you're doing. How do you get it to go at that angle? Like, because you're using a brush. So what, do you just click from, how do you get it from one point to the other at that exact angle?
I'm just clicking there. Like, I'm just doing my best to hit it. So I click here, I just click there, and then I hold shift and I click over there. And then I keep holding shift and I just keep clicking.
Okay, so it's just click and shift.
Yeah, just holding shift as you're clicking to like make these polylines. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, polylines, right? You're just drawing with a straight line. Yeah. Yeah. So that's one way to use the brush. Another way to use the brush, I'm gonna create a new layer, and now this is where I make the lighting on the scene match the lighting on the background. So I make a huge brush, huge, 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 huge. I swatch the background. I'm gonna try and look for blue. I guess this is like the brightest I'm gonna get. Or actually, before I do that, I'm just gonna pick colors. I like to use orange and blue because in a rendering, it's just easy to understand that orange is the direction that the sun's shining on, and blue is the side that is where the shadows are going. So if you do on the background layer or on any layer that you want to adjust the colors, you can do image, adjustments, hue and saturation. If you change the hue, I'm gonna get it to an orange and a blue, hopefully. That's close. You go to the other end. Okay. Close. No. So I'm gonna get it close, which would be like there. There's probably a better way to do this, but that bluish green is good enough. I'm gonna oversaturate it a bit since I'm here, and I'm gonna make it a little bit lighter. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is actually over the background layer to kind of fix the colors. I'm gonna use this soft brush, so no hardness, the size that I want, not full opacity. I'm gonna do like 15%. I wanna go, actually no, for this one I wanna go 50% because I'm just changing colors, but I wanna do it gradually. So I'm gonna make the brush the color that I want it to be. Make it like a light or lighter blue, I'm gonna paint over the green areas. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. I'll just keep it over here. And then I'm gonna switch to orange, or in a different layer, I'm gonna switch to orange. Kind of go lighter, not full on orange. And start tapping away at where the sun would be. And I get it to be really, really, well, oh no, getting ahead of myself. I'm just changing the color of the background for now. Oops, new layer, paint orange, or where I want orange to be. And now, this is where blend modes comes really, really handy. So over here next to where the layer opacity was, I can switch the blend mode to have that color blend into the layers below it, right? In whatever different way. So I can select like around color burn, or there's one that's just straight up called color, I believe. No, oh yeah, all the way at the bottom. That's not quite doing it. I'll just pick something that works. That's fine, I don't want to spend too much time. And blue, same thing. Just kind of go through them and see. So I still retain like some color variation from the background. I can even lower like the opacity to see that color variation from the background come through. but still keep my new tonality. So if I turn that layer, if I turn those layers off, no, I lowered the opacity too much, I think. I mean, it's subtle. I don't know if you could see it, but I definitely can. I'll just turn it up. But yeah, those are off, and now they're on. Anyway, now that I have the background in the same way that I want to match the lighting, I use those same colors, but now I do go for the deeper orange, and I simulate a sun over here. And first I do it like very much at the center, and then I make the brush bigger, and I kind of do it all over the image. Just kind of like wash a lot of orange. And then I do the same thing on the same layer, because I want the orange and the blue kind of competing on the same layer. And I kind of go a little darker than what I did for the background. And I do the same thing from the other side, except I'm not gonna focus so much on the corner. I'm actually gonna oh, I was using 50% opacity. You wanna go for a lower opacity, like 15% when you're doing these like color washes. And then I'll usually just set that layer to overlay. All right, so that's what that does. And that's why I wanted to match the background first. So we had those other assets, like you can always like, let's say you had like arrows, right? Let's just pretend this is an arrow. Now I'll start dropping in arrows or clouds. I don't know, this is a cloud. Apparently this is a shadow on it already, so sure, it's a cloud. And again, like the type of graphics, the type of images that you pull up to use in this way, they have to go with like your references, right? You have to know what your illustrations or what your renders are aiming to look at. If it's photorealistic, if it's diagrammatic, if it's stylized, whatever it is, it has to go with the concept of your project. And if the concept of your project goes with the way that you draw your project, when you speak about your project, you don't have to justify yourself so much. You let your work kind of speak the story you want to speak. That makes sense? Cool. We got a few minutes. Any questions?
How do you blend two images? Because I need a line weight and a perspective. How do you blend them?
Or how do you blend lines onto an image?
Let's say
yeah,
I
sorry.
have a line drawing and then I have a perspective, and then I need to make it look half lined, half perspective, like half line weight.
Got you. Actually, there's a way I can kind of simulate that. So if I double the main layer, I'm gonna take it all the way to the top so you can see what I do to it. This is kind of cheating and it doesn't look great. I mean, I don't love it. I prefer to export my lines out of a model, but if you don't have lines, like I don't right now, I'll go to filter, right? And here you have a whole bunch of filters. You can blur your layers, you can add noise, like definitely look up different ways to use the filters. But if you go to filter gallery, there's one called on stylized glowing edges. Boom, so it kind of reads the edges. I can adjust their thickness, their brightness. So this is what you're saying about using, right? This is what you want to use? I can't really see you nodding. Sorry, I have like too much like packed over there in the corner. Karen? Okay, I think you're muted, but I think I saw you say it. Anyway, I have the lines here. Yeah, okay. So you wanna, okay, so your layer looks like this, right? Okay. So actually, I was gonna make a post about this week about which blend notes to use, like where. So for this one, I would go for either screen. Like screen makes whites come through really well. So if you're painting white or you're painting white light, or you're adding brightness or anything white that you want to pass down, screen would work for you. Let's say I want the lines to be black. I duplicate that layer. I can do Control-I to invert the colors in a layer. So now I have black lines. And for black lines, I would do linear burn. Yes. So linear burn for your black lines to blend down and screen for your white lines to blend down. There's other ones that will have it like blend slightly different. But you know what's cool is I can keep the white lines and I can add another dimension to this. So I'll duplicate my lines layer. And I'll go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And by just blurring those lines a little bit, right? and then lowering the opacity of that layer. All right, you don't think it does much, but actually, right? I mean, again, it's like whatever you want it to look like, but I think it's a little more, it pops a little more. It's a little more dramatic. There's a little more variation from the edges. On top of that, let's say I take that layer, I go back to the filter gallery. And let me pick something that goes with what's going on. I can go to sketch, no. Texture, sure. Ooh, can I make it look like this? Oh, it's like pixel art. So if I go and do that, I don't know. It does it to that layer that had the shadows. Right? Yeah. So you can kind of like add another effect to those lines. I don't think I picked the right filter though. I got a filter gallery. I think that filter was too strong. Oh, you know why it is? It's, yeah, I'm not sure why it is. I mean, these filters are grabbing more from the layer than I expect them to. But actually, that could be cool. I just got to change from linear burn to maybe like difference or exclusion, subtract. I mean, yeah, remember that all of these, right? I can then see, is it actually doing anything? Not really. Pick a different one. And this one kind of changes the colors, but you know, it's just, you have a little bit more freedom thinking this way. So you can add different filters. Oh, I saw one that was dope. Yes, hard mix. Lower the opacity. Boom, right? Just makes it more comic bookish. Now the iconography at the top goes a little bit better with the illustration below. I can do stuff to the icons above now. Like I can just do the same things to the icons that I just did to the bottom layer and they'll look even more alike, right? So I can just go back through history. And there's a way that you can record history for a layer and then apply all those commands to a different layer. So you do like the exact same, you do it through on one layer and then you copy all your instructions for that layer onto a completely different layer. But I don't know how to do that. I know you can. That puts us at 4:45, but I feel like I just gave you the essentials of what you need to know about Photoshop. Like this is way more than what I'm expecting you to turn in as far as like renderings. I mean, if you get this, at least like this is nice, you know, but I guess like, you know, even this, if you've never used Rhino before and you've never used Photoshop, like you turn in something like this for your renderings out of Rhino, that'll be fine. I'm not requiring V-Ray anymore for the assignments. I was, you know, if we had time today, but no, clearly. If we find our way to it for V-Ray, I at least already gave you like exposure to it. What we're gonna do is we're gonna discuss a little bit more tomorrow, but I am gonna give you a 40-minute webinar that Chaos Group, the company for V-Ray, has, which is what I followed to learn V-Ray. And honestly, the 40 minutes, I don't think I had to play through it. I mean, granted, I knew V-Ray from before, but that was a completely new version for me, completely new interface. And the 40-minute webinar, I maybe like replayed for a total of an hour and a half, 2 hours to like learn everything in that video. So, but yeah, out of V-Ray, remember I showed you could export different channels out of V-Ray. Like you can export like a whole bunch of different graphic information about the render out of V-Ray, those layers. We're gonna learn how to do that in Blender too. But essentially exporting all those different layers, those different graphic styles out of the same 3D software, having all that match and play together in Photoshop is such a fast and fun way to work. And that's basically the goal for this class, right? Like at the end of the day.